start the meeting, it's all you.
All right, thank you, Leslie. I now call to order meeting number 17 of the DCTF, April 15th, 2021. Leslie, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Member Thompson.
Here.
Member Ondrasek.
Here.
Member Mayer, I believe is absent. Do not see him. Member Von Hune.
Here.
Member Vargas Smith.
Here.
Member Reed.
Here.
Member Coyne.
Here.
Member Tai.
Here.
And Member Varjane.
Here.
So that is all present and accounted for with the exception of Member Mayer.
All right, so Rob had let me know that he was most likely not going to be able to attend, but he was going to try. So if he's not here, we should proceed without him. Is there a motion to excuse Rob Mayer from this DCTF meeting?
So moved.
All right, is there a second? All right, thank you. All in favor of excusing Rob Mayer for meeting number 17 of the DCTF meeting, say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed, say no. All right, the ayes have it, and Rob will be excused for this meeting. All right, so Leslie, would you please read the DCTF declaration and procedures, please?
Yes, thank you. Meetings are conducted by the chair in accordance with the following procedures. The chair of the DCTF directs all activity during the meeting. Any items on this agenda may be continued to a subsequent meeting. Special procedures, time limits may be applied to any items as prescribed by the chair. Copies of the current agenda and staff reports for each of the items on the agenda are available online on the Downtown Precise Plan website, as well as on the city clerk's website. And then if we move to consent calendar, there are no items on the consent calendar.
Okay. Moving to general business.
So the first item we have for you this evening is a discussion on the Surplus Land Act. And I will be sharing my screen and giving you a presentation on that. One moment. Ooh, there we go. Everybody can see that?
Yep.
All right, so the Surplus Land Act. This item was requested as it came up in regards to the city-owned property within the Downtown Precise Plan. I am by no means an expert on the Surplus Land Act. All the information I'm presenting you today came off of the state's website. So the plan for this meeting is I'm going to go through the information that I put together, and then I'm going to take all of your questions or comments down, and any questions that I don't know the answer to, which probably will be most of them, we're going to forward on to our city attorney for hopefully to get a response, and then present that at another meeting once we do. So having said that, minimize this, maybe, go away, there we go. What is the Surplus Land Act? So California's Surplus Land Act, also sometimes called SLA, is a state law that directs local agencies such as the city of Santa Clara to prioritize the development of low-income housing when selling or leasing their surplus land. And surplus land is defined as land owned by a local agency, which is no longer necessary for that local agency's use. There have been recent amendments to the Surplus Land Act, Assembly Bill 1486 and Assembly Bill 1255. And generally, these amendments clarified and strengthened the reporting and enforcement provisions of the SLA to promote increased compliance. So specifically, AB 1486 had HCD, which is the Housing Community Development, the State Department, begin reviewing notices that local agencies are required to send to them and collecting information on each jurisdiction's owned sites that are identified in their housing element inventory. And then AB 1255 was HCD was required to adopt SLA guidelines, and these were just recently adopted. And I have some information about those further in the presentation here. The next slide, yeah. So these are the main articles of the SLA guidelines. Article 1 summarizes the purpose and scope and defines the lands that are exempt from the provision. Article 2 describes the mechanisms for identifying and disposing of surplus land. Article 3 identifies affordable housing requirements for development built on disposed of surplus land. And Article 4 summarizes the notification, recording, and reporting requirements to the California Housing and Community Development Department under the SLA. So these are some of the requirements of the SLA. So the first one is the governing board of the local agency has the steps for, sorry, let me start over. So the items that I'm going to go over right now are the steps that a local agency has to take in order to dispose of surplus land. So the first thing a governing board of the local agency has to do is hold a public meeting to declare the property as surplus land. A low and moderate income housing availability notice must be sent to interested housing sponsors that are identified by HCD and local public entities within the jurisdiction that the surplus land is located in, and invite those interested parties to respond to the notice of interest. So that's step one. The second thing that the city would have to do is put out to open competitive bid by a local agency and invited to participate in the competitive bid process for either of the following purposes. So this is important here. So they've got two purposes that you can put out there for the competitive bid process. A housing development, which may have ancillary commercial ground floor uses that restricts 100% of the residential units to low or moderate income, with at least 75% of the units restricted to lower income households, with an affordable sales price or an affordable rent for a minimum of 55 years, or 45 years for homeownership. Or a mixed use development that is more than 1 acre in area that includes not less than 300 housing units and that restricts at least 25% of the residential units to lower income households. Again, with affordable sales price and affordable rent for 55 years or 45 years for ownership. Then third, the interested parties have 60 days to respond to the notice. If a notice is response is received, there's a 90-day good faith negotiation period that begins. Should no interested party respond within the 60 days, or should the local agency not agree to a price and term, then the local agency may dispose of the surplus land without further regard to the SLA, but still must comply with Government Code Section 54233. And Government Code Section 54233 states that if 10 or more residential units are developed on the property, not less than 15% of the total number of residential units developed shall be sold or rented at affordable housing cost. So as I said, there is city-owned property within the downtown precise plan boundary. It's highlighted in the orange here. It's the office building at the corner of Homestead and Lafayette, as well as the small retail building and the surface parking lot. Some of the surface parking is required to serve the courthouse, and that is a deed requirement. The city does also own the parking lots at Franklin Mall, to the parking lots and the common space, but that is not anticipated to redevelop in the near future. And that would be something that would be a further discussion once Franklin Mall decided to redevelop. So a little more context, parcel 1 in the green, which is the small retail parcel, is about 1.3 acres, has a lease on it that currently expires in October of this year. Property 2, the red property, which is the office building, is 3.8 acres, and it has a lease on it that expires in April of 2022. And then the third property is the surface parking lot. It's 1.1 acres, and that the city is currently required to provide those 112 parking spaces to the courthouse, and there is no expiration date on that requirement. All right, so with that, I'm going to open up to the task force members for their questions, comments, discussion, thoughts.
All right, can we see some hands? Who'd like to go first?
I'm going to stop share for a minute.
Oh, yeah. Nobody. Come on. Oh, there we go. Oh,
so, I mean, if you don't, let me just say, if you don't have questions today, if you want to digest this information, you can email me your questions. I can collect them and give them to the city attorney. Should I not be able to answer them, that's an option as well.
Can we keep that map up for another minute or two?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Fine. All right, Atisha, I see your hand, so you can go first.
Yeah. Leslie, I just have kind of like general questions on SLA. Understanding that it's just not for affordable housing. I thought there are like cultural and school and libraries are also part of those kind of,
Correct.
uses that the land can be disposed of.
Yes. So you would set, those would be interested parties as well. You would send it to Parks and Schools, correct?
Okay, great. Because if you're wanting a theater, that kind of comes into that cultural building. So just want to make sure that this is just not about housing. There are other community uses that fits into the SLA allowable land uses.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, can I just make a note?
Yeah, go ahead. Noel.
Sorry, put my camera on. So I just want to make sure that we'll ask the questions. Of course, I'm not an expert. I've been through the process twice, but there have been some changes since I did it about 8 years ago. Is when we had to go through with 2 properties in a different city. Yeah, when it comes to a theater, I just want to, sorry, press the wrong button. Just want to note that the requirements for government agencies, schools, libraries, so for the opportunity first, so it wouldn't be a theater depending on how it functions, it might not fall under that. The second part of that is that typically, right, it would be for the whole property. So whoever would be doing that piece would also be taking on the whole property, and we have to have a plan for the property they want to purchase, not just where the theater would be located, and we still have to go to those requirements. I just wanted to make sure that that was just to note that even we'll check with the attorneys, but I'm fairly confident on both those pieces.
Got it.
Thank you. Are you good, Atisha?
My second question is, when you say like the fair market value of the property, so that will be just, it, like if I'm an affordable housing developer and I'm interested in this project, and so I have to pay the fair market value ground lease or whatever, buy it. Okay, so if I can't afford the property, then it will be open to a normal market rate developer to come and develop it, correct?
If the city doesn't agree to the terms. So it's, if the affordable housing developer is asking for something that's not agreeable or asking for something that's way too low, whatever it may be, the city and the person who's leasing or purchasing does have to come to an agreement. If they can't come to an agreement, and there are requirements for the agreement to be reasonable in the act, then the city can dispose of the surplus land.
So the city can make like providing a theater and the park open space and the food. Well, I'm just trying to see like in our preferred option, everything that's on those 2 parcels, can those be those requirements that affordable housing developer will be required to provide?
Yeah, probably not. No, that would not be reasonable. I don't think that would pass the test.
Got it.
Unless they wanted to, you could ask.
I mean, like a lot of those are community uses, like, like that's why I was thinking, like if Park and Rec, like I know we don't have funding in our city to build these things, but if there is a creative way to figure out the funding mechanism, then can those uses do fit Surplus Land Act, and how can we creatively make sure that those uses still stay on these first 2 blocks and all the energy we have spent to plan them? And I would just like to know if there is a way, and I know lawyers are smarter in this arena than us.
Okay.
All right. Deborah, I saw your hand next. Go ahead, Deborah.
Yes, thank you. I want to make sure I understand that these property 1 and property 2 combined comprise in their entirety what we've been calling block A and block B? Yes. Okay. So that little strip that looks like Prometheus parking, that's not in block A?
No, it is not.
Okay. That's helping me put into context.
Yeah. It kind of, block A sort of, the line goes straight down this way.
Okay.
You can't see it in this picture, but it lines up with the street there.
Okay. So this means that whatever
Washington.
we put on block A and block B would need to include affordable housing in that phase of the development?
Correct. Or at least you have to go through the process, right, of disposing of the property. Yes.
Yeah, I would, even if it went through a market rate developer, right, the city still does have affordable housing requirements,
Yes.
at 10% minimum. And I know that ultimately would be a council policy decision if they want to go with the 10%, if they like to pursue something different. I do want to note, Leslie, that this feels like a long, long time ago based on, I believe when we did some discussion on the appraisal, like many months ago, we did discuss how the value of the property, what the property value was and how the value decreases from a property value standpoint when the percentage of affordable housing goes up. So that's something that we had discussed previously as well. And I do want to apologize, my dog's in the back barking if you can hear her. So I apologize. I also just wanted to bring up one more limitation on the property, not a limitation, but something we'll have to address, is that as part of the Prometheus Franklin Washington Street deal, when those roads get built, if Prometheus is not redeveloped, we would have to provide parking spaces that would be lost within the roadway. And I apologize, I have the agreements here, but I won't waste your time. I believe it's around 37 parking spaces or
Something
so
like
that would be required. So I just wanted to remind it's been a long time since we talked about that. So just since we're talking specifically about the property, just a reminder on those couple of elements.
Okay, and one more thing, those 112 parking spaces, they could be in a parking structure, right? They don't need to be ground parking. They just need to be next to the courthouse?
The language that's included, it says that it has to be contiguous to the courthouse property. I think that leaves enough flexibility to discuss with them what that would mean and how they would accept that. So it probably would have to be a discussion. I think there is flexibility there.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Deborah. Are there any other hands?
So Adam, I don't have a hand.
I don't know how you don't have the hand.
I'm looking all over.
All right, go ahead.
Sorry, Dan, before we go, I want to make sure.
Yeah.
I just got a text from the CDD that I said 10% affordable housing and it's 15% affordable housing. So I want to correct myself immediately on that. Thank you, CDD, specifically Rena.
Thanks, Rena. Even with one hand, she's pretty fast.
I kind of had a quick question on the 37 parking.
I think Dan
sorry.
Sorry. Go ahead, Atisha.
Okay.
Actually, this is like just a question generally for like parking, even on like block A, B, and all the parking. So like once we adopt the plan, we're going to have new parking requirements. How does that impact the current existing land use? Like, like now we are reducing the parking requirement for office space by quite a bit. And we're reduced. So like, will that reduce the parking requirement for courthouse? I mean, California government wants to reduce car parking and parking everywhere.
It's specific. The deed requirement is specific to the number of spaces.
And for Prometheus, like with the land use changes, will their parking requirement drop off? So we don't have to pay them for 37 parking?
So, oh, sorry. I was gonna.
Oh, sorry. You want me to answer, Manuel, or you want to?
I was gonna answer.
I'll let you answer.
But you're the chair, so.
No, I'll let you answer it, but no.
Yeah, on the Prometheus agreement, no. If they redevelop at some point, that's something that would have to be looked at as part of the overall development. But the agreements were made with the assumption that they would not be redeveloping, that we would build a roadway. So no, that would not change. On the courthouse, this is what's required. I mean, if the courthouse voluntarily agreed to make a modification, I guess they could, but that's what's required, and there's no way to modify it by the city.
So changing land use, the zoning codes for parking does not impact the existing land uses until they go through a redevelopment process.
And that's correct. And for Prometheus, to be clear, we have agreements that have been not approved, generally approved by the city in context and by Prometheus. We're going to go to the next step to actually acquire the easement. So that's already all approved and set.
Got it.
We can't change that at this point. Thank you, Manuel. Okay, Dan.
Okay. I guess this is for Manuel and Leslie and Rena. Have you had a case study of this in the last couple years? I should know this, but where city-owned property did come up for availability, and if so, what happened?
I'm not, I don't have a case study. I can tell you that about 5 years ago, I worked on 2 city-owned properties in the city of Sunnyvale.
Okay.
And they both had different approaches, and depends what kind of response you get. One was in a more industrial area,
Mhm.
and there was no interest from any affordable housing developers or any government agencies on the property. And the other one was on a area that was converting to residential, and that one had a lot of interest and got multiple offers that had to be looked at. And there was a council process. I'm not going to bore you with all those details. So those were 2 reasonably recent, not from 2 years ago, but about 5 years ago. And there was, depending on the location, mattered a lot. And they both got offers. One was, not, and the one that was more residential got multiple offers.
Okay, great. All right, thank you.
I don't know specifically if the city of Santa Clara has done any recently. I'm not aware. I don't know if Rena and Andrew know of any examples at all.
I'm not aware of any recent ones, no.
Yeah,
No.
thanks.
Thank you.
I guess I had a follow on is if there was, sorry, Adam, if there was another parcel outside 1, 2, and 3 for affordable housing, could a swap occur? So in other words, there's interest in the surplus land. They want a chunk of that property, 1 and 2. And there's another location where we can put a certain number of affordable units. Is that on the table?
That's, let's say, I would
I
say
don't
we
know
probably
if
want, we want to ask the attorneys likely, but my
Yeah.
perspective, but that's a legal question, is that if they're both city-owned properties, Dan, they would both have to go to the Surplus Land Act. You couldn't just swap them, but that's a legal question. We'll have to ask the attorneys.
Okay, got it. All
Dan,
right.
do you mean defer the affordable housing to development of other blocks in the area?
Correct, correct. So it would be non-city owned.
Hmm.
Okay,
Probably
actually,
not.
Leslie, did you get, I'm not quite following the question now. Did
Yeah,
you-
I don't think
Yeah.
you can, because the
Okay.
Surplus Land Act requires that you first offer it up to another agency for either affordable housing or a public park or a public school, right?
Understood.
So,
So we
Yeah,
couldn't put it into block 6 for later development. It would have
right,
to be in this
it has to
location.
be this piece of property that the city owns.
Got it. Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, next, Atisha, do you have some additional-
I would just kind of make a comment. I feel like we should not be scared of affordable housing. And from my perspective, like working professionally, affordable housing buildings are better architecture. They have more funding for good design than a market rate building. So I'm actually happy that this will be more of an affordable housing, and there are more controls of who they get leased to than market rate housing in many ways. So you are actually supporting local teachers and nurses and fire, like everyone you want to bring to the community will have an opportunity to live in affordable housing. So I won't be scared with the word affordable housing, because it's like anyone making, in our county, affordable housing is like annual gross income of around 140,000 a year, which is post-tax, which is a lot. So don't be scared of that number or that word. I would just tell the whole community not to be scared of it. But I would just like to, see how we can creatively bring other land uses which are also community oriented along with affordable housing and make this maybe a really affordable
Mhm.
2 blocks with bunch of community units. Like that's my perspective of looking at it. And let's not be scared of affordable housing.
So I just want to note from a city policy direction that we are fully supportive of affordable housing. We have very strong affordable housing policies. I know you weren't speaking about the city. Our kind of what we're doing right now is we really want to explain to the task force and go to the task force so everybody knows what the requirements are. But we are fully supportive. We have the policies in place, and I know the current city council has expressed a lot of support for affordable housing throughout the city. So I just wanted to note that.
And Manuel, on that note, I would like to mention, comparing a lot of other South Bay cities, our city has done best in arena kind of allocations and targets. So kudos to our city planners on that. I'm pretty proud of us with all the affordable housing and housing we are building.
Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if this is something that Manuel can answer now. But I'm wondering if it's possible to break the properties into pieces so that they're noticed in pieces. Um, I appreciate Manuel explaining that I either Manuel or Leslie explaining that it was a process. But it can also be a process that has multiple parts depending on what the land is. And right now it's they're sort of big chunks that have been drawn in different ways in the plan. And I'm just wondering if it's possible to break them up and go through the process. So I don't know if that's a question for the city attorney or if that's something that you have a handle on now. Again, they would continue to be city-owned pieces, but the process could be broken into pieces for individual parts of the total property.
Good question,
Leslie,
but I don't know.
I don't know the answer to that either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get back to you on that one. That's a good attorney question.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
basically saying instead of trying to, do this in 2 big sections or 3 big sections, right? The way the roads all divide up.
Right. Yeah.
You would end up splitting and subdividing them into smaller parcels and trying to break them up that way? Potentially.
I would say at least divided by blocks. So there are like 3.
But that's a 2.3 acre parcel. So there might, I think what Matt's trying to get at, there might not be a palette for someone, an affordable housing builder, to bite off that much of a project. And so is it within the means of the city to basically subdivide it into, an acre and a half, 1.1 acres, and then section them off into 2 parcels or something? So I understand what you're trying to get at, Matt. That makes a lot of sense, because a big parcel is going to take a lot more capital, and they might not be able to have the funding or the means to accomplish it.
But then wouldn't that just make all the parcels more affordable for affordable housing developers, because you're already dividing it? And then once these are 2 different parcels, then the same SLA applies equally to both parcels.
Well, but you also run into, you get efficiency over scale, right? So the bigger you build, you start picking up efficiencies, and your square footage price and/or unit cost is essentially going to go down, because you're able to buy materials cheaper, you're able to get pickup efficiencies in labor, timing, less permitting, soft costs, all that kind of stuff. So a smaller parcel would actually cost more to build out than a larger parcel. But at the same time, capital, depending on where it is, you might not be able to get enough capital to build a large parcel. So I think what he's looking for is just options. What are our options if we don't get anything back from affordable housing developer? Because I think we all want affordable housing, kind of to go to your comment about being scared of it. I mean, I can tell you that I think our community has fought. I mean, our city has a really, like Manuel said, a really great, robust affordable housing program already. But I mean, the community itself has gone back and actually fought for more affordable housing on different projects within the area that went before that robust policy actually came about. So I don't think anybody's scared of affordable housing. I think we're all trying to figure out how to make it work, and the complexity of large parcel versus small parcel obviously might contribute to the viability. So that's a great question, Matt.
Yeah, just to an additional context, I appreciate the discussion of the viability question. I really thought it would just be valuable for the city to have a sense of how it might enter into good faith negotiations around pieces of this puzzle, because it really is, it is a process, and so the outcome is largely defined by that process, but it might just give the city and frankly this group a kind of context to think about how that process might happen. Sometimes the pieces are easier to sort of get your head around how they function in the whole if you're dealing with them as pieces.
Well, thanks, man. So I got a couple questions if there's no other hands. Oh, Manuel, did you want to say something? I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to note that Yeah, we'll ask the question because we don't know the answer to that. Kind of when we anticipated this properties, and if you ultimately could RFQ it or RFP it, the intent was to hopefully combine both parcels into one site so you could kind of master plan it a little more. But certainly that would be if you had all the flexibility. So I think it's good to look at options to see kind of how you can approach it different ways. So I just wanted to note that kind of this in the past described, say, more of an intent to with the specific plan, the precise plan in place for the city to RFQ both the 1.3 acres and 3 acres and consider the 1.1 acres for the courthouse and just see if there was one developer who could make it work. But of course, we have to go to the full process to see what makes sense. But we'll look at other options also.
Thank you. Are there any other task force hands up? Otherwise, I'll ask a couple questions. I got some. All right. Where's my questions go? Oh, I got too many pads of paper here. So you talk about competitive bids. So, I mean, there's potentially more value than just monetary value. You know, we've talked about a bunch of infrastructure that needs to be completed. You know, there's other pieces that might come into play. So how is it only defined by money, or are there other considerations that can be taken into consideration when RFPing the property, reviewing, leveling the bids, and then, you know, awarding? I guess is one of the questions. I'm sure Xander or Brian will have to answer that.
Yeah.
It doesn't talk about the AMI for the affordable housing. It talks about the percentage, but it doesn't talk about where. I mean, I know that one of our biggest challenges has been that when we talk about affordable housing, and even our policy at 15% is only 80% AMI. I know getting into those deeper levels of affordability, 60, 40, and so forth, are really difficult to do because obviously it drives the revenue stream down significantly, and then it becomes unviable. So I don't know, and I've read through both of those bills. I don't see anything, so I don't know what their take is on that. You know, is it only meeting 80%? Is it meeting 100%? Because that's another one, right? I mean, some people will say 100% still affordable because a lot of the new construction ends up going for more than your average area pricing because of all the amenities that they put into these new projects versus older projects. So I have that question. And then roads. So, I mean, I think, you know, there's been groups, you know, and residents in the city that have been very boisterous about who's got R2D2? Who let them loose?
Sorry, that's me.
Who let R2D2 loose?
Sorry.
You know, very outspoken, I guess I'd say, about putting the original street grid back. And so obviously some of parcel 2, a little parcel 3, parcel 1 is all actually slated to become roadway. So is that, do you have to surplus land act that area, or are you able to convert that back into a road because it actually applies support for what we would RFP, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how the state would look at that because they're going to look at every square foot as a viable spot to potentially build on. But obviously you need to put in the infrastructure. So I'm concerned about that. And then I think what Dan was asking, and I could be wrong, and Dan, you can chew my head off later, but I think what you were really asking was, how does the Surplus Land Act comply with the state-owned property, which is the courthouse, which is in front of 3? So do they have to comply with the Surplus Land Act, or do they have a different set of regulations that they have to follow at the state level? Because obviously we're going to, you know, with our land, we're going to offer it up to the affordable housing and then our own different departments of schools, parks, and what have you. But at the state level, if they saw this precise plan and go, wow, this is awesome, we want to be a part of it, and they want to dump their land, you know, what process do they follow, and then what agencies do they have to go to prior to disposing of said land?
Oops.
This is another question. And then Manuel, this might be a question you could answer. If they dispose of their land does that free up the parking immediately, or do we have to go and negotiate because they still have a claim to it? That might be a question, but you might have to look at that. I don't know. Because I read through the MOU with them and it doesn't say anything about if they dispose of it, right? I mean, obviously it was written when, you know, there was no path forward on redevelopment. So sorry.
Yeah.
Leslie, remind me if I'm wrong. I think the language is actually in the deed, right? That goes with the land.
For the courthouse.
For the
Yes.
courthouse, yes.
Yes.
So it's so my understanding, we'll double check, is that they'll run with the property, right?
Correct.
And then I do know that when we discussed the courthouse in the past and went to council, we actually did describe the process that they would have to go through, and we had some attachments to that. So we can provide those for the task force again. But there is a process that the state has to go through as well. I believe it's a little different than ours, but the property still gets offered up, and there's a process, and we'll pull that back out and just refresh my memory and also resend it to the task force for your benefit.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Emma.
On streets, you know, we will ask the question to the
Yeah.
attorneys. I believe that the streets are, you know, public streets for city use. So I think you do have flexibility there. That's different than if you were selling it for profit, because basically you're maintaining the property for a public purpose. But we'll double check with the attorneys on that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
And last thing, I think that plays into what Matt again, if what Adam just said about me. If I get this wrong, let me know. But by putting the grid in, you're actually doing that subdivision you're talking about.
You're making it viable, right? You can't
Correct.
you just building this wonky. I mean, look at whoever chopped this up. I mean, they're an artist for sure.
Abstract.
It looks like Picasso to me.
Miro.
Leslie, please save this picture. We'll frame it and put on a plaque out. We'll put it. It'll be the start of Franklin Forward. Sorry.
Deborah, is this a Miro or is it Diebenkorn? What is this?
Sorry,
I digress.
No, yeah, we should put it as a temporary mural during the construction site, you know.
Oh my God, like this map, me and Leslie and all of us are talking a lot about this map for Franklin Forward also. We are so aware of it.
I don't have anything else for now. I'll probably stew on it and think of a few things. So Leslie, if I can,
Yeah.
I mean, if we can maybe get all of our questions in by Monday to you, is that reasonable?
Sure.
Before we send anything off to the legal team?
Absolutely.
Okay. So DCTF members, if there's any additional questions you think of over the weekend about this, if you want to get them in to Leslie, that'd be great. And then Leslie, whenever you send it in, if you can just share those questions, just so we're all kind of abreast.
Yes.
Obviously, you'll have to BCC us.
Yes.
Any other questions on the Surplus Land Act?
I have a quick question. Leslie, can you share this PowerPoint with us so that
Yes.
I'm like I need to process and visualize.
Absolutely. I will put it up. I put all the presentations up on the task force website, just in case you ever want to go back. They are all there, but once I put it up, I will email the task force members with the link to it. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
So, all right, then we should probably move to public comment for this item, if there's no objections. All right, we'll go to the public. So,
See one hand.
I see one hand. Suds?
You should be able
Yeah,
to
hi,
unmute
can you hear me
yourself.
now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I had a number of questions, sorry. So I would like to understand the definition of the city no longer needing the property. And this is kind of along Adam's line about streets. So what are the allowable uses for the city? I was thinking, you know, possibly the city doing something like what we did with RDAs, and, you know, like we developed the convention center. Could we just develop affordable city employee housing on a portion of the land? And that would be for employees of the city, because we have a hard time retaining employees. And then I do like Dan's idea about the land swap. Because let's say there's a developer somewhere else in the city that has land that the city could use for a park. And then the developer could then develop this housing here the way that they want to. Or they would put the affordable housing there and the city could do whatever they wanted here. But yeah, it's sort of similar, like if the city had a bunch of tiny little parcels and they wanted to consolidate into a larger park, could they then do land swaps with those small city parcels to get a big chunk of land for a nice big park? So I wonder, it seems like a land swap might still meet the state's requirements as long as affordable housing is built on those parcels.
That's something that I would have to ask, obviously, about the swap. But I can tell you the SLA does define agency's use as land that is being used or is planned to be used pursuant to a written plan adopted by the local agency's governing board for agency work or operations, including but not limited to utility sites, watershed property, land being used for conservation purposes, educational purposes related to greenhouse gas emissions, and buffer sites near sensitive government uses. Interestingly enough, that's what the definition is in the SLA.
But you're saying the governing body could define whatever use is.
It seems that way, yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I see another hand up.
I'm on mute. Mary Grizzle. Thank you, Suds.
I just have one question, and it's more asking for clarification. So if the city has surplus land and that's where we want to put the theater on that parcel that is called surplus land, does that mean they can't do it?
That's correct. You first have to offer it up to an affordable housing developer, a public school, or a public park. So that's the first step in the process.
And who determines why would the city determine to have the property as surplus land? What benefits do the cities get from having it? Or do you have a choice? Is it automatically because it's city surplus land?
It's because it's city-owned land. If the city no longer wants to use the land for their own purposes, or including redevelopment for their own purposes, then yes, the way that the city sells land is they go through the Surplus Land Act process, which means you first offer it up to affordable housing developers, public parks, and public schools.
But only 15% of that parcel needs to be affordable housing, right?
Once it's redeveloped, so that one clause was, even though if it's being redeveloped for residential, let me go back to that. There is a 15% requirement, which is basically the same as our affordable housing requirement in the city of Santa Clara. So that's in there if for some reason a city does not have their own affordable housing ordinance. So it's in line with our affordable housing ordinance. If someone develops residential on there, they still have to comply with our affordable housing ordinance.
There's nothing to say that, oh, I'm sorry, Manuel.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just want to note, and I could be wrong, we'll double check. This is just my past history, that doesn't prevent an affordable housing developer who does fully 100, like older units affordable housing, could also propose during the Surplus Land Act to purchase the property from the city. So it doesn't, what that is a minimum, but you could certainly have an affordable housing developer who's going to make every unit affordable as part of their proposal. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. I was going to ask, there's nothing preventing affordable housing being built on top of the theater, right? It could all be part of one building.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. My kind of a quick question on that, again, like kind of piggybacking on Mary's comment. So we all want a theater, and the theater could also be an kind of a building owned by the city, like, the theaters we have in our parks and the way we own libraries. So can this be a park and rec property? If I know the funding will be really difficult, but like hypothetically, if the city had the money or a way to fund it, can then be theater be put on it? Because I'm just trying to understand, like the whole surplus land like says you need to put it forward for community uses first, and a community is really expressing that theater is a big community use we want here. So how can we make sure that in all this planning process, we are like really putting that mark and laying the foundation that the theater happens there? I understand the financial feasibility is something totally we need to consider separately, but like legally, is there a way in the Surplus Land Act saying, hey, affordable housing developer, we are going to place this land here, but our city has defined and our council has adopted these community uses must happen on the site along with affordable housing?
Well, so I would think this would be part of what I was kind of getting at about there's more than just monetary value of a land lease or a sale. And so you kind of have to
community benefits.
Yeah, community outweigh the community benefits and what potential value those have versus just the monetary value of some developer giving us the highest price. I mean, I always look at money comes and goes. You can always make more of it, but land is a finite resource that once it's gone, it's gone. And so it's more precious than a couple dollars here or there. And I know, when I say a couple dollars, we're probably talking multiple millions, but in the scheme of things and the actual benefit to the overall community and fabric of the city, I'm interested to know how the state really, wants to sit there and how we are able to level out what we're looking at, right? I mean, if somebody's offering us $100,000 a month, but someone's offering to give us everything we want, but maybe only $20,000 a month, I mean, what's worth more? I mean, the open space and the theater and the arts and all that, or $80,000? I mean, I'm simplifying it obviously, but
yeah, no, I get you. I'll put that as one of the questions for the attorney.
Yeah, I think that's really important to understand. And then the other, I guess, to kind of parlay on that is.
Chair, do you want to close the public comment?
Oh, sorry, we should close the public comment. Sorry. Do I have a motion to close public comment? If there,
no, I think there's still one person who was let into the room who had a question.
I don't see a hand.
I don't see any hands.
I see one on the panelist side, Atisha, but I don't see anyone from the public.
Teresa O is in our side of the room.
Yeah, she is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, let me
apologize. I don't see the hand.
I'm just watching. I don't have anything to say.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay. There we go.
All right. Sorry. I was like, I didn't see anybody. Do I have a motion to close public comment first? Sorry.
I make the motion.
Move.
Okay. Second.
Second.
All right. All in favor of closing public comment on item 1? Say aye.
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 All opposed, say no. All right, close public comment. So, so now I guess we can finish up our discussion, right?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that. I apologize.
No
So, yeah, I think that's really important to understand how we can do that. And then what I was saying about the parlaying is who's the decider on leveling the bids. That's a very big concern of mine. Because there's been so much energy from the community and effort put forward that I don't want this to be, reviewed and approved without really having some consideration from the larger community and the people who have been really working towards, revitalizing and restoring this downtown. I think there's a lot of little nuances that you can get caught up on. So that would be something also.
Okay.
Are there any other comments or questions? Oh,
go ahead, Butch. Go ahead, Butch.
This is an area that I'm not overly familiar with, so excuse the question if it's not appropriate. Are we saying that the land that the city owns in those blocks must go under this sort of arrangement, or are there other arrangements that can be made? My question is basically, can the city decide to lease the land for 100 years to somebody, or do you have to go under the Surplus Land Act and sell the property?
It's for sale or lease. So
Okay.
either, yeah.
My question is like, what can we do to not define this as surplus land act, or not all of it as surplus land, especially if we are looking for some community uses? I think that's a more
That's a good
specific
question.
question. Yeah, like if, as you listed, like education was part of it and the theater and park and rec was part of it. So what can we do as based on a master plan that some of this is not defined because it has gone through a valid community outreach and the whole process, planning process?
Good question. I'll put that on the list.
Dan, did you have something? Because I know you don't have a hand.
I'm good to go.
Okay. You turn your camera back on. I thought you were ready to go. All right. If there's no more discussion from the DCTF, remind everybody just to, Leslie, you'll send this out probably tonight or tomorrow. So if everybody can take a look at it over the weekend and get all questions in by end of day Monday, that way Leslie can then send them off. That'd be much appreciated. So do I have a motion to close item number 1?
So moved.
Second. No, I second.
You guys fight it out. No. All in favor of closing item number 1 this evening, say aye.
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 All opposed, say no. All right, the ayes have it. Motion is passed. All right, we will move on to item number 2 this evening. This is,
I'm going to share my screen. Item number 2 is a discussion on the community outreach. In our scope of work with the consultant, there were 3 sort of bigger points of community outreach. The first was workshop 1. The second is workshop 2, which is where we're at right now. And the last is an open house. Those are the 3 sort of big community outreach items that were scoped. So I'm going to share my screen again. And make this smaller. There we go. All right. So the consultant has come up with an outline for the second phase of community outreach. And I'm just going to sort of go over the outline with you and then open it up for your comments, questions, discussion. So we'd be doing a downtown placemaking virtual workshop sometime probably mid-May. And it would start with an arrival and welcome. And this virtual workshop would be a Zoom webinar. The first part of the presentation would be grounding. So it's just a quick review of where we're at and what we're doing, and then presenting the preferred land use framework to the community. After that, the consultant would do 3 polling questions, and these are the questions they have right now. How well does this framework capture the community vision? What do you think of the preferred land use framework? And then which of the following land use elements do you support? I didn't put all the land use elements on here. They had about 15 elements that sort of describe the land use plan that people could check. And then they'd move on to the second part of the presentation, which would be talking about placemaking elements. They'd introduce those elements and show the plaza buildup, which is a graphic that they used at I believe our January meeting of the task force, where they sort of showed how the plaza near Lafayette Street, how the buildings would build up around it. And then they talk about streets and public spaces, retail, cultural activation, and then buildings, design features of buildings in particular. And then after that, we'd go into breakout rooms. Each breakout room would have a facilitator, and it'll be about 35 minutes. And that'll be a time to have small group discussions about the preferred land use framework, as well as all the placemaking elements that they presented. And then we'd come back to the group and do a report back from each of the breakout rooms, and then close with next steps. So that is the outline. Are there any comments or questions on this approach? And then this would be followed by an online survey as well to get a greater reach of the community.
I will open it up to DCTF members. Please raise your hand. All right, Atisha. I'm gonna go Butch this time. Butch, go. Sorry, I'm like trying to wait for everybody.
Thank you, Adam.
Go.
When we talk about the community vision, I just want to make sure we have an understanding. So this workshop is to affirm the community vision that we already put together with some comments versus reinventing the wheel of reopening the door for let's discuss what the community vision should be. Absolutely, yes. Okay, thank you.
The last, I should have clarified too, about a year ago when we did our first outreach, which was online as well. It wasn't a webinar, but it was a survey that we posted on the website, and it had the 3 land use options, and the community responded to that. So this would now be coming back to the community and showing them, you know, what we've been doing for a year. This is the product, and letting them comment on that.
Great. Having been involved with this now 4 or 5 years, we've reinvented the wheel several times. So I just want to make sure there's guarantees in there that we don't go back to square one and say, oh, we no longer want this anymore. We want to move forward. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good question.
All right, Deborah.
Yes, I have 2 questions actually. Who would be facilitating this outreach virtual workshop?
Good question.
Okay.
Those are some of the logistics that I need to figure out. I will very likely be asking task force members to volunteer to help us facilitate. Because this will be an open webinar, we don't know how many people will attend. So we'll have to plan enough facilitators for a lot of people. So yes, I might be reaching out to you, but it'll include the consultants, of course, and city staff as well.
Okay. And my second question was, would we consider doing this virtual workshop on a Saturday morning, for example, than a workday evening, just to, you know, make sure everyone who is interested has a chance to attend?
That's a good question.
Actually, on that comment, I had attended the Prune Ridge, both the workshops for Prune Ridge, and one was on Thursday evening, another one was on Saturday afternoon, and both of them were pretty well attended. So I know like there'll be a little bit more extra hours of like reconducting the workshop 2 times, but the materials consultants are going to use is exactly same. So I would suggest like 2 different slots to like, you know, cover more people that way. I mean, it's just going to be the hours they're going to be conducting the workshop. So it's a little bit more ask, but I'm sure they'll be open to it.
That's a good question as well.
Is there any opportunity to reach out to some of the pretty known groups that have a pretty good following to try to do some of the outreach as well? I mean, so we don't burn up a ton of money.
You mean like Catalyze SV?
Like Catalyze SB, Reclaim Downtown, Old Quad Residents Association. I mean, there's a lot of groups that have, I think, hundreds, if not thousands of email lists. So, you know, it might behoove us to reach out to some of the ones that have actually been in tune and kind of spark
to promote the workshop. Is that what you're saying?
Not even to promote. I mean, to actually get information out. If they put together like a package.
Okay.
Some people can't attend meetings all the time.
Yeah.
Just read, you know, like a slide deck.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I mean, I think
we would be following the meeting with the using the same content with an online survey that people could do as well. So, but yes, that would be a good way to get all of that out there.
My suggestion would be the online survey could start a week before the meeting. It just attracts more people. Once they see the question, then they get interested to attend the workshop. So it could be like a week before and 2 weeks after the meeting. It could stay on for 3 weeks. It will help promote the workshop as well.
Yeah, I just want to say we'd be more than happy to post it up on our site and, you know, get it going a week before. I agree. I think you got to you got to have some runway before to get some interest, and we can coordinate, if that's acceptable to the group, on our side.
And we would do the same at the university.
Yeah, I was just going to add,
Yeah.
this is actually my area of expertise, facilitating conversations, creating surveys, and marketing kind of stuff. So if I can be of help in any of that, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Great,
We
thank
just totally scored. That's awesome.
Leslie, this is all what was already included, I think, in that like $7,800. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, this would have been in person. So we're shifting a little bit, obviously, to do a webinar, but yes, this is already included.
Okay, this is not
Money I already assumed was spent.
So just Leslie, have they shared what kind of breakout room exercises there will be, or this is all the interactive piece of the workshop?
Right. So the consultant will be coming up with questions, to start the discussion. But it would be based on the information presented in the presentation that occurs at the beginning.
Got it.
My only other comment would be, I know they want to start in May, but once they have a precise plan, what they're trying to get any kind of last minute input before they send this out to do their environmental study. Is that correct?
Correct. And it's also a good idea. Like I said, the community, we had like 400 something responses to the online survey that we did about a year ago.
482.
Thank you. I knew a teacher would remember.
I read all of those 1,300 written comments for a week.
Yeah.
So I know.
We had a lot of people participate in that, and so this is the opportunity to circle back with all of those people, and then even reach more if possible.
I think on some of the outreach things, something we did last time worked really well, Leslie, so maybe we should repeat. And I would say if we can involve some of the high schoolers in the process beyond university students, that will be great. And I would actually like to mention there is one person in the audience, Nicole. I've been mentoring her. She's a high schooler and she wants to be a city planner. So I asked her to join this meeting to understand what kind of work city planners do. So Nicole, if you want to reach out to Leslie, Rena, I can send you their email addresses. They are in the shoes.
Maybe she has some resources for us to send it out to.
Yeah, she just moved to San Jose. She was in my community until like late last year.
Awesome, Atisha. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Are there any other DCTF members that would like to speak? Sorry. I don't see any hands, except for Atisha's, who always leaves it up.
Sorry, I thought it should just take it down on its own.
I just bypass it down. All right, are we okay to move to public comment? Everyone good? Okay, we'll move to public comment. So if there's anyone from the public who would like to speak on the public outreach item discussed this evening, please raise your hand. I don't see any.
See no one.
Last, going once, going twice. Motion to close public comment. No motion.
So moved.
I got them all quiet finally. All right. So all in favor of closing public comment, say aye.
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 All opposed, say no. All right. Public comment is now closed. Are there any additional comments from the DCTF members on this topic?
My another comment was that using that Google Site platform to share some of the graphics was really good. So I'm sure something similar for the online surveys in round 2 might be helpful. It just attracted so many people seeing those graphics more visually on a mobile friendly interface.
Okay.
Good.
Any additional, Butch?
Just a quick question. Will we have a chance to review the material before we go into the public presentations?
Oh, thank you, Butch. Leslie?
Review, what, I'm sorry, what do you want to review?
Will we have an opportunity to see the material before it goes out for the public?
Oh,
the actual
once the,
presentation.
yeah, that's a good point. Once the survey is actually put together, sending it to the task force members first. That's a great idea. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that'd be really good, just in case
Yeah.
weeks or anything like that.
Yep.
Well, and also if we're going to help facilitate the breakouts, it would be good if we were familiar with the content prior to the breakout.
Yeah. And we'll do a facilitator training as well for anyone that volunteers. So yes. So please, when I ask for volunteers, I know you guys are all going to be great at it.
Awesome. Any additional comments? And all right, a motion to close item 2.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor of closing item 2?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. All right, item 2 is closed. So we will move to adjournment. And I can't believe this, we're almost made an hour.
Woohoo!
Is there like any public comments general we should be accepting?
Yeah, I thought that you're right. Is there?
I have 2
isn't
out
there
of agenda.
Section. Oh, you're right.
Yeah,
So
public presentation.
Public that would. Is there anyone from the public that would like to address the task force on items that are not on the agenda this evening? Please raise your hand. Looks like everybody's gonna drop it off, but please raise your hand. Oh, we got a panelist. I think is it only from the public, or can we take them from the?
It is only from the public, but I don't see why if Atisha wants to bring something up that's not on the agenda.
Does anybody have an issue with that, or is that okay? I'm okay with it. All right.
I just have like 2 quick questions. There were like 2 agenda items that the task force has discussed to be taken to the council in last few meetings. And I just personally cannot attend through all the council meetings or keep up. So my request is if there is any agenda item that we make a motion to take to the council, it's either reported back via an email or like, made an agenda item. Hey, we took this to the council and this is where we were. And I know there was one thing on the development project on Monroe, and other one was the budget. So I just would like to have an update by an email or at the next meeting.
There was nothing on the Monroe project that got pushed. They did not actually go before council.
Got it.
And for the budget, council gave the approval for staff to negotiate with WRT based on the items that we had approved and to negotiate the final cost and come back with the final budget numbers.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
That's a really good point. I should have put that item on the agenda. So thank you for bringing that up.
Could have been a consent item.
It could have been. Adam, where's your summary?
Day job got me. Apologies. All right, since there's no, I see Mary Grizzle.
Okay, she should be able to talk.
You're on mute, Mary.
Yeah, I just have one quick question for Leslie or Manuel or where do we stand on the form-based code?
So that was an item that one of the items that Adam mentioned that he went to council with to ask to include in the scope of work. And that is something we will be providing a detailed scope to council for, as well as a funding source. So that'll be a council decision, probably coming up end of May, sometime in June, back at council.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, if you guys don't want to shut off early, I got a 1-hour presentation I can give you. I can look that up.
Sorry,
I can put it on the next agenda.
Yeah.
I would actually like to put Anna's suggestion of doing a guest lecture series as an item to be discussed on next agenda. Maybe we all can come with some suggestions and maybe do an initial outreach to people we think would be good to present here pertaining all the topics. So maybe we can then make a decision next time at the next meeting. But I really like that suggestion of bringing some other people from, our community surrounding us who have done similar work. I can bring someone on form-based code from Redwood City.
Okay.
Will you put that, Dan, remind me, help me remember that when we talked a little bit about putting the agenda together. We still have the dates, right? Can you remind us real quick, Leslie, of the next couple dates for future DCTF meetings so that Tisha can work with her contact to see what my work is? Sorry.
So our next meeting is May 20th. And then the next meeting after that will be June 17th.
I think in the next meeting, we discuss if we want to do it, and then maybe we plan it for June 17th or the July meeting to have them, or it could be a separate item.
Okay.
I mean, this can be a full public meeting that we, do a little bit more outreach to invite more people.
Okay.
I can put something together to present next week, how we should work on that lecture series.
We should actually close the public presentations section.
You are correct.
Sorry, I go back real quick. Got a second time tonight. Sorry, my fault. So if there's no one else from the public who has a presentation on an item that was not on the agenda this evening, please raise your hand now. We're going to close public presentations. All right. Do I have a motion to close public presentations?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of closing public presentations, say aye.
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 All opposed, say no.
No.
No, I have it.
Sorry.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting of April 15th, the DCTF meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Butch. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Chan. All in favor of adjourning this evening's meeting for the DCTF, say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed, say no. All right, the ayes have it. Hour and 17 minutes. Great
Thank
job.
you,
Good
everybody.
job, guys.
Thank you.
Reminder, just everybody, look for the packet tomorrow, read through everything and get your questions in by end of day Monday so Leslie can forward it off. Sorry, I'm just going to repeat a few times.
No worries.
All right. Have a great evening. Thank you to everybody from the public who joined us and hung in there the entire time.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.